In Washington, the Supreme Court is back to the bench, and this term, the justices will consider major cases on issues including abortion, gun rights, and religious freedom. Today is the first time since the start of the coronavirus pandemic that the justices have heard oral arguments in person at the Supreme Court. Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh called into the proceedings as he recovers from COVID-19. And joining us now to talk more about this is Amy Howe, co-founder of SCOTUS Blog. Amy, welcome back. So good to see you. Let's talk about the cases on the docket, starting with Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which really could potentially have an impact on Roe versus Wade.
That's right. This is a challenge to a Mississippi law that bans almost all abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. And the lower court struck down the law, said it was unconstitutional. So the state came to the Supreme Court last year, asked the justices to weigh in, and the justices agreed to do so earlier this year. They'll hear oral argument in December with a decision likely sometime next year. When the state came to the Supreme Court, it was just asking them to weigh in on the law, but in its brief on the merits, it actually asked them to overrule Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the landmark decisions establishing the constitutional right to an abortion. So depending on exactly how the court rules, obviously the impact of this case could be really decisive.
Yeah, and on the religious freedom front, the court is considering whether the state of Maine can exclude religious schools from a state tuition voucher program. Tell us more about that, and how do you see this playing out?
So this is a really interesting case. The state of Maine, because it's kind of rural, has an unusual system in which school districts can opt, instead of providing high school educations, can opt to send a school district can send its students to another public high school and pay the public high school back, to send its students to a private high school and pay that private school, or it can provide tuition vouchers for parents to send their children to the private school of their choice. But the school districts say they won't spend money to send children to private schools that provide religious instruction. And so the Supreme Court in 2020 said that if states don't have to provide public funding for private schools, if they do, the Supreme Court said in that case, which is a case called Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue, if they do, they can't discriminate against schools just because they're religious. And so this is a question of, can states discriminate against schools, can distinguish between schools because they provide religious instruction? And it's something that the Supreme Court has sort of tiptoed around for several years now, but the conservative majority is now going to take up this case and decide it.
Yeah, and Amy, there's another case I quickly want to talk about. And this one is revolving around death row inmates' access to ministers ahead of their execution. Talk to us about why this case is so significant.
Yeah, so this is a case, there was an execution scheduled in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and the inmate came to the Supreme Court and said, I want to have my spiritual advisor in the room with me, not only in the room with me, this is an issue that had been litigated a couple of times on an emergency basis at the Supreme Court, not just in the room with me, but I want him to be able to lay his hands on me and to pray out loud while I'm being executed. And the Supreme Court actually granted his request to put his execution on hold, and it's going to hear oral arguments in the case. It fast-tracked his appeal. It's going to hear oral arguments in the case in early November and decide the case. The state has cited security concerns as the reason not to allow this, but the Supreme Court is obviously very interested in this issue, and some of your viewers may have seen references to what's sometimes called the shadow docket, these cases that come to the court on an emergency basis. And this is a case in which a case came to the Supreme Court on the shadow docket, and the Supreme Court said, we're actually going to go ahead and hold oral argument and decide it on the merit.
Yeah, Amy, we have about a minute left here, but something I quickly also want to talk about is progressives, as you know, have been calling to increase the number of justices. Do you think President Joe Biden is likely to pursue packing the court?
So this is, I think he's likely waiting to see the recommendations of the Supreme Court Commission. I testified before the commission, although not on the issue of the number of justices. I testified as a reporter on issues of transparency. I think there's a question of what the president is likely to want to do, and the question of what the president politically is likely to be able to do. And I don't have views as a reporter on what the president should do, but certainly I think in this era of divided government, I think it's, you see the issues that are going on right now in Congress with the budget, and it's just, I think, kind of hard to imagine a majority that is going to vote to expand the court or to adjust the term limits for justices right now.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for your time. Always great to get your analysis. Amy Howe, co-founder of SCOTUS Blog. Thank you again.
Thank you.